Anglit. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lior from Tikal, and I'm very, very happy to host the R&D Leaders Forum for another online event. Today's event is about latest trend in the Israeli Tech Radar developer portals. The first part of the event, Suzanne Daniels from Spotify, will talk about building for developer happiness. In the second part of the event, I will host a distinguished panel of R&D leaders about developer portal. If you can say hi, Suzanne Danielle from Spotify, you can raise your hand. Ron Barabash from Yotpo, and Yaniv Katz from ZoomInfo. But before we will start, I would like to introduce the R&D Forum for newcomers. In the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic on March 2020, we wanted to help the R&D leaders in the industry to adapt to the new remote working style. The first event was about remote work playbook by hosting Dan and Murph from GitLab. The event was great success, so we decided to continue with series of events once a quarter, discussing the hottest topics in the industry, such as hybrid remote, how to build a remote playbook, Tech Radar career, etc. So today the forum consists more than 100 R&D leaders. And for all of you, there is a meeting agenda on the calendar invite that you can access the previous recording if you would like to explore a little bit. The Israel Tech Radar is built from 4 rings. It's try, start, keep, and stop, 4 domains, backend and machine learning, DevOps, frontend, and mobile. And the content of the Tech Radar is based on Tikal business activities across the Israeli and Silicon Valley tech industry, and with partnership with several leading Israeli tech companies, which is Playtika, Tabula, Intel, Next Insurance, Wilco, Yotpo, and Lumen. And we're also conducting a Tech Radar conference next week, which is based on the Full Stack community. The Full Stack community is the largest meetup in Israel, with more than 14K community members that meet on regular basis for more than 10 years. So the conference is happening next week for 2 days of tech celebration. The first day, November 14, with keynote speakers, expert panel, and 2 tracks of series of lectures. And the second day, November 17, a distributed hackathon in the sponsors' offices with 12 hours of hands-on on a topic of developer portals that we are gathered today. So I'm inviting all of you to buy tickets to your team. It's going to be a great event from our perspective. So let's start the first part, and I'm happy to invite Suzanne from Spotify to start the event and speak about building for developer happiness. Suzanne, I will stop the share and I'll let you do the share from here. Okay?
Great.
Yeah, that's just a minute. Okay, it's yours.
Great, so I'm gonna share my screen. Bear with me. This is always exciting times. There you go, I think. Good. Everything all right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So hello, folks, good afternoon, I think, where you are. I'm Suzanne Daniels. I am the developer relationship lead for Backstage at Spotify, which means I'm accountable for ensuring everybody learns about our vision on developer experience, how Backstage can help you massively improve your developer experience, but also to make sure your experience with setting up and adopting Backstage is great, and your feedback improves our platform. So to summarize it, my focus is basically spreading developer happiness. The Backstage team at Spotify I'm a part of is on a mission to spread that happiness, not only for developers, but for every aspect of engineering. Think of platform, data, backend, ML, mobile, ops, security, and engineering management. So basically anything engineering. I'm delighted to share some of the secret sauce today, feeding Spotify's success, which is, in a nutshell, making people happy, and especially engineers and developers. So Spotify is the world's most successful audio streaming company. We have over 8,000 employees. More than 50% of them are in product development. We've been growing very rapidly over the past decade. But instead of slowing down while we were growing, we were actually to scale our efforts and accelerate our product development. And we're doing that with the developer retention rates being very well above industry rates. So basically, we're doing quite great, and we want to share that success today with you. What makes that secret sauce? So I will look at the broader software development landscape, then I will detail more about how Spotify approaches this and our culture, but then in particular, building for developer happiness. So over a decade ago, Marc Andreessen had this phrase, software is eating the world. He was true then, but he's even more true today because nearly every business around here is a software business. Most core businesses transfer into technology, and for that technology to work, you need software. The demand for software engineers shows that. Like it's been growing over 20% year over year. There's now over 26 million active developers in the world today. And the prediction is that that number will grow to 45 million.
Susan, did you change the slide? Because we see the first slide. Did you change it?
I don't know. Oh, dear. I'm so sorry for that. It was focused on the Zoom meeting, not on the... There you go. That's beautiful, right? It's growing to 45 million. This was a cliffhanger. Sorry for that. So with this rapid growth, it's no surprise that software developers are in high demand. Turnover is spiking across the world. It's difficult to hire people, but it's also difficult to keep the people. So that's good to keep in mind. Being a developer today is also not an easy job. So when I started out as a developer, and that's a long while ago, but I wrote cash registry systems. There were relatively few languages you could use, not that many areas of specialization. There were not really frameworks that were reusable. It was upcoming, but it took a long while. But if you compare it with modern day software development, and just looking at Spotify, to create a feature, we may need a team of developers. We may need to add data instrumentation, build out new UIs. And those UIs are for a variety of customer devices in a variety of languages. We need to add, update data pipelines. We need to train and build ML models for advancing recommendations, build new backend systems, build new microservices around that, and connect all these things together, sometimes across multiple clouds. And they need to be run at a global scale. It needs to be reliable, secure, and also cost effectively. So yeah, the tech has become smarter, more powerful, but the ambitions of what we can do with software are greater. The problems we are trying to solve in general have gotten bigger. And this increases complexity, increases the cognitive load for developers. Because being a developer in these times, make no mistake, it is very, very confusing and hard. So yeah, where are we today? Basically, every company is a software company now. Every business is dependent on their software developers and more broadly, all the engineers there. And our software developers are struggling with the modern day developer landscape and tooling landscape. So the success of Spotify, but basically all businesses, they actually depend on the developer effectiveness. So when you talk about developer effectiveness, there are some textbook definitions around productivity and efficiency. But the measure of effectiveness should take in much more that impacts the developer experience, because we are talking about the experience that developers have. It's a human-intensive process. You need to really invest in that and make sure that you measure the right things. So productivity might go up, but in fact, the quality of the code might be bad, or the mental health of the developer might not be that well, might be running into a burnout. If you look at the wrong things, you're not really sure if you're doing the right thing. It doesn't tell the whole picture. We believe that we get good signals by looking at the squishy human questions. So do the developers feel empowered to do their best work? Is their energy being applied in healthy ways to, achieve their goals, but also the business goals? Is it easy to innovate, experiment, try new things developers actually care about? So we think that if you want to approach effectiveness, you must also address things like morale, stress, burnout, all other factors that contribute to poor quality, high turnover in the long term. So the secret sauce at Spotify, how do we approach this? Well, we've been on a long journey to optimize our particular formula for success. We learned a lot of things along the way, and we deeply believe in the approach we have now, because our data-informed approach has helped us refine and validate our principled approach. So we believe that developer effectiveness actually is a function of developer productivity and this other concept that we refer to as developer happiness. So let's unwrap that a little bit. Productivity. This is a territory that most of you probably are very, very familiar with. Everybody's talking about it. The CEO is obsessed with it. You're obsessed with it. The local team probably spends a lot of time talking about this in their retros. Individually, engineers see this come up in their development talk. So productivity is the rate of output per the unit of input. Simple as that. For developers, it means basically that they need to do less work to build better products. So we are obsessed in figuring out how these developers get to that point, to do less work, to get their given job done. So we build tools, we share tools in the endless pursuit of being productive. But to do that, we need to understand what is actually productivity. And we need to understand it very, very deeply. So there are many metrics. Probably you're all aware of the DORA metrics, Accelerate metrics. These are the great places to start. We use all of them. But we've added a few as well. So we have taken the patterns to study, understand, and connect with our Spotify consumer fans, and applied those to our developers, treating them actually as our customers. So we were successful in our consumer business, and we applied those principles and those approaches to our developers. So we have built product insights and design functions inside our developer happiness teams. We have user researchers, we have data scientists, we have designers. Even the open source Backstage team now has them, by the way. And we try to create also these feature teams and embed in there as well. So we invest in both engineering specific and cross-functional productivity indicators. So just to give an example, we'll deep dive on a question like, how easy can a cross-functional team of developers deliver a new feature across iOS, Android, and web, which is a very, very common scenario at Spotify? Or how quickly can a new backend engineer stand up their first production component in their first day at Spotify, and what slows them down, and what can we fix? It's about looking at those things, real life examples, real life scenarios, and see and learn how can we actually improve this to get the best out of it. And it's a really human approach. It's a consumer approach. So insights are, of course, really, really great, but acting on them is, of course, better. So in our quest to reduce this developer frictions, we have implemented two key concepts, and I'm going to explain them to you. So one is the golden path, and the other one is the golden state. This helps us in defragmentation of our ecosystem, reduce complexity, but also automate the integration of our software fleet. So there's many benefits that we look at here. So the golden path is the recommended set of technologies and patterns to build out new capabilities with. So we have golden paths for instance, backend, for mobile, for machine learning. Basically, for all these components, we have a golden path. So when an engineer onboards, they learn with the golden path. They learn everything they need to know about their place in the organization, what they are doing, what their place is in this constellation called engineering. But also, it's a thing to go back to each time. And we also see that happening a lot. The golden state, it's a quantifiable, actionable list of criteria which aligns to both the golden path, but also to the best practices. So how we drive compliancy, how we make sure that we have a consistent experience, both in engineering, but also for our consumers. These golden states really matter. So we don't make it mandatory, but if they align to the golden state, they will get a lot of stuff for free, like the security, the scalability, the observability, because it's ensured. So the incentive to actually use this golden state is so high that we do not make them mandatory for anyone. Also, if they want to upgrade something, we have the platform teams who can help them because they are in the golden state. And if you're in the golden state, people generally know what to do when they need to upgrade. They know what to expect. And you may have your own version of this at your company, and maybe it's not that unique, but the promise behind it, that's probably what you're craving. It's the mindset around these, and that is basically the secret sauce at Spotify. No one is forced to do this. No one is telling you as a developer that you need to do it. And instead, to ask our developers to adapt to our infrastructure, we ask our infrastructure to adapt to our developers. And that makes a huge difference. So now let's talk about the happiness. So I don't want to get philosophical about happiness. We need a bit more time then probably. But it comes down to the fulfillment of one's wishes, expectations or needs, and pleasure derived of this, right? So for developers, this can mean that they would be able to create something, to write code and ship products and feel good about it. But unfortunately, the biggest challenge for developer happiness is that developers actually do not spend time writing code. It's less than a third of their time. That's not good. They're doing all sorts of other stuff. They're troubleshooting, managing security issues, searching for documentation, managing incidents, and many more other things. And even if you try to introduce meaning-free days, your typical developer experience, the typical day of a developer, it can be pretty chaotic and not that fulfilling at all. And yeah, if you have unhappy developers, they write worse products. They tend to look around, tend to see if there's another company where they could join. It impacts your speed. Great talent is wasted on unproductive tasks or unwanted tasks. So empowering everybody to be their best at work, that really matters. And for developers, being empowered to do stuff like innovation, trying new things, that matters a lot. So friction gets in the way, it reduces happiness, and yeah, you end up in a worse place. And we believe that happy developers make happy code, which is conveniently our tagline. So how do you build for happy? So I'm going back to the point of understanding your developers. So we have those design folks, we have the user researchers, we have that whole team ready for developer happiness. We have a very high number of product managers in the platform teams. That is treating developer happiness as a product, treating your developer platform as a product. We embed those developer happiness folks with our engineering teams, with the feature teams, to sit beside them and to understand their friction and help them. But we needed more, so we need to measure things. So we built a tool, and that's called AngSat. That's a survey across our developer population that looks at satisfaction for every project, process, a tool, cultural aspect for our developer ecosystem. And it's not like off the shelf, somebody spent some bit of time survey. It's developed by a team of data scientists, user researchers, who mine and present correlative insights on dev happiness for the product managers. So also we work with Google around this. Google also uses this. It helps us to figure out what our developers care about and where to focus our time and energy. So rich research for the product managers, rich insights for the departments to look at investments. And yeah, let's take a look at these learnings. So we found that we needed to optimize for three things: that's speed, but without compromising security and also reliability, skill, without compromising our quality, and lastly, very, very important, how do you tame a very, very rapidly, increasingly chaotic ecosystem? All those tools, all those frameworks, all those languages. How do you go about that? And we need research to realize, to focus on these things. Could we came up with this ourselves? Yeah, maybe. But you need these insights. You need the quantitative insights to get the full picture and develop a better insight on the right action. So quantitatively, a developer can be really productive, but yeah, if they are thinking, I'm sitting in the room, everything's on fire, or I'm stuck in the mud here, yeah, they're still going to hate their job. So for instance, being able to search who owns what at Spotify, documentation, tools they depend on. That's a really important thing we found out. Searching information was like one of the top things that we needed to build. So 90% of intended searches, they are successful. And that's like really, really good. And who can say that about their documentation system? 90% success in finding stuff, finding who's on call, finding that documentation of that API that one team that's based somewhere else built. So filtering the right information also is a part of that. So we look at all those aspects. Okay, now you find the information. How do you find the useful parts of that? That also makes us improve every time and every time again. So we had a great search, then we needed to build out the filter capabilities to make it better for them. And that's how we go about that. So yeah, that's how we approached speed and skill So what is the big one? The big one is the chaotic ecosystem, of course, because that's really hard. Golden paths are a great start because you can already show people what are the best practices, where they can find stuff, how they can use stuff, what their part is in the organization, how they can introduce new stuff. All that information is a great start. It will eliminate somewhat of the complexity, mainly initially, but that doesn't eliminate the fundamental complexity and the set of software interactions and the dependencies you have. So for Spotify, the answer for this has become very clear. So we built this developer portal, which you might have heard of. It's called Backstage, to tame the chaos and help these three important components, speed, skill, and chaos control, into balance. So it is it's not a secret at all, because it changed everything. And many other organizations have asked us to share, and we did that. And I will tell a bit more about that later. But with Backstage, we align a highly distributed, very autonomous culture of thousands of engineers across hundreds of squads, and we improve the satisfaction. Their quest to manage tens of thousands of software components, we were successful in achieving that. Also, Backstage has helped us achieve standardization in a Spotify way. So instead of working against our culture, we actually worked with our culture, creating a marketplace inside of Spotify so that developers can contribute solutions to common problems they have through Backstage plugins, and others can adopt those. So Backstage works by helping people to find the right solutions without mandating them to do that. And this really, really contributes to developer happiness. So Backstage at Spotify is consistently used by almost every developer every day at Spotify. It has one of the best satisfaction scores in our NPS of any product we use. And I mentioned that we have this concept of plugins inside of Backstage. It is basically what made our developer portal a success. So we put the development of Backstage in the hands of our engineers who have the domain knowledge, instead of having a team figuring out how people should work. And that was really successful. So over 80% of the contributions in Backstage is from outside of the core team. The core team is only like 4 to 6 engineers. We have over 180 plugins, which were built and are maintained by those teams. So that's pretty awesome. And we expose pretty much each piece of infrastructure and software development tool within Backstage, from Kubernetes to security, to data pipelines, observability, mobile components, everything is in there. And we couldn't have built that with one team. And we even went beyond the developer workflow integrations. So we had plugins like Skill Exchange, which is basically a marketplace for your knowledge. If you have a team and you don't have particular knowledge on some framework, you can post it here on the Skill Exchange, and you can actually find people to embed in your team for maybe a sprint or maybe 2 sprints, maybe forever. That also happens, to give that particular skill set. This helps us reinforce some of the most important aspects of our culture, which is growth and professional development. So it's for learning and development opportunities. And it has been widely adopted over the past years across our organization, and it solidified our culture of peer-to-peer learning and inner sourcing. So especially now in those new times where we have more and more remote work, Skill Exchange is a great example of what we mean by building for developer happiness. So it may not be harder to get our work done from our home, but it is hard to build a sense of belonging and culture. So that is really hard, and this helps. It fosters a lot of collaboration. It fosters connection and growth across all the teams. So Backstage are, well, no longer secret, helped us unlock speed, skill, and chaos control to improve happiness. So with Backstage, we have reduced the effectiveness function into something simpler. Developer effectiveness is simply a function of Backstage and its rich ecosystem at Spotify and the culture around it and the community around it. So I hope that I have convinced you that developer happiness is both important and possible to achieve. And that you can go back to your company and ask, who is the head of developer happiness? Armed with ideas on how to support that work. So let's recap. Effectiveness requires both happiness and productivity, and that's not easy. So the main ingredients for the secret sauce at Spotify are, we have dedicated teams around developer happiness. Those teams are responsible for adoption metrics. So they don't just build a tool, they provide services to support adoption and to improve those services. We staff it with product managers, design people, any roles that you would have in a consumer product as well. We need to deeply understand those customers with our Engset. We try to defragment technology with golden paths. And we enable the promise of the golden stage to allow friction-free forward migration. And all those things that you get when you are compliant to those golden states. We avoid mandates, and you should adapt your infrastructure to developers and not adapt the developers to your infrastructure. That is not good. Put it all together in a single pane of glass using Backstage. And every single one of our developer happiness teams builds out their tools and services in Backstage. So we try to overcome the tool overload and cognitive overload because of the consistency in the UI in Backstage, because of that single pane of glass. And you put your entire software ecosystem in one place. So Backstage is open source. So yeah, that's it's out there. You can grab it. It's a super successful project. We have over, it's still 200 here, but we have over 400 adopting companies that we know of. It's a very, very active community with a lot of contributions. Yeah, we try to grow this project to spread the developer happiness around the world. Spotify does not own Backstage. It's a Cloud Native Computing Foundation project. It is currently just in the incubator stage, and we are preparing to move it forward there. But the future of the open source Backstage project is ensured by donating it. Some news is that we have also put in an effort to release plugins that we have created internally at Spotify and that we use daily. People were asking us around it, and we will sell those in a bundle shortly. That's a few that we will start with. One is Soundcheck, which ensures the quality and the alignment of the software architecture. So basically, it is a very, very nice checklist for each component that you have in your organization. Role-based access control. We specifically developed this because a lot of companies were asking for it. And we built this experience where you can limit access to certain actions and data. Skill Exchange, that's our stellar marketplace that we really, really love internally and we depend on. Pulse to track the metrics, which is something, well, we all are aware of how hard it is, but putting that together in one place is really, really cool. And Insight. So besides having adoption of tooling in your environment and in your developer ecosystem, Backstage is also such a tool. you need to be able to have real good insights on adoption of Backstage in your organization, and that will be added as well. And we can share more about it in our launch event. If you're interested in that or interested in Backstage, you can scan the QR code. It will point you to all the guides, how-tos, and you can schedule an appointment with me to talk about an hour long about Backstage and all the nitty-gritty and some demos. So if you're interested in Backstage or commercial plugins for Backstage, then please scan the QR code. And yeah, I'll hope to be talking to you soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Suzanne. And please join us to the next part of the event. We're doing a panel discussion. If you could stop the share, and I will share my screen.
There you go.
Yeah, you will be able to ask questions and things like that, Suzanne, while going to the panel. Okay, so I'm happy to host two more experienced panelists, Ron Barabash, Chief Architect from Yotpo, and Yaniv Katz, Director of DevOps from ZoomInfo. So let's do a quick round by Ron and Yaniv for introduction. Each one of you, please introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Yaniv. I'm been in the industry for 15 years now. Spent 7 years at Bezeq International, which is the biggest ISP in Israel. There, I added the IT for the internal and the ISP department. After that, I worked 7.5 years at LivePerson, a B2B SaaS company, where I was the director of cloud infrastructure, spent 7.5 years there, and then moved to, in the past 2 years, I'm at ZoomInfo, responsible for developer agility group. Well, our focus, it's all about the aspect of the CI/CD and self-service portal. And our focus is developer productivity from two angles, the velocity and the cycle time. Just very high level about ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo is a global SaaS company, B2B. We are providing go-to-market platform for enterprise companies and also SMBs customers. And what we are doing is enable their sales departments to maximize revenue potential. We are about 700 developers, multi-cloud environment with actually probably all kind of technologies out there, and we have hundreds of services in our platform and growing.
Okay, great, Yaniv. Ron?
Okay, so you hear me, guys? You hear me well? Cool.
Yeah.
So first of all, pleasure to meet you, and a pleasure to be here. Also, Suzanne, been looking forward to meet you. Also, I saw all the BackstageCon videos last week, so great job there. So my name is Ron, and I'm with a company called Yotpo. Yotpo is also a B2B SaaS company, and we are basically an e-commerce marketing platform. We help businesses all over the globe build a better experience with their customers. I've been in Yotpo for the past 8.5 years. So I've joined the company when it was 30 people, and I was the 10th developer. And I saw it grew to right now 250, 300 developers across multiple countries. We have R&D centers also in Bulgaria, in the Ukraine, in Tel Aviv, in Yokneam as well. And basically, I've been in the industry for almost 15 years, doing in Yotpo a variety of developer roles, The main one was being the tech lead of our data infrastructure group and building our machine learning and MLOps operations. And for the past 2 years, I've been the chief architect of the company, basically focusing on developer experience and platform engineering. Yeah, basically that's it.
Okay, so let's continue with both of you, Ron and Yaniv. Try to, what do you think makes a developer portal and how do you characterize it from your standpoint?
So, Yaniv, you want to take it? You want to go first?
Let me try. So, developer portal, I think everything, and I think that the presentation that we just saw really described it very well. Everything, we have a challenge, some kind of a pain in the developer organization that we need to solve. We want a happy developer, but apparently the day-to-day is much trickier and complex. So we have so many tools and so many clouds that the developers need to understand. And what we want them to do is to really focus on writing code. But it's very hard for them to do. So I think that if I can put it in a sentence, I think that creating for the developers a single pane of glass is so accurate and really describe what we want to achieve when we are providing a platform for the developers to work as a one-stop shop and really be successful on their day-to-day work. So I think this is the developer portal for me.
Okay, Ron, from your standpoint.
So I think it pretty much sums it up. But to me, like, there's two things that really makes up a developer portal. And first thing is self-service. I think it's like the main agenda when you try to push such an initiative. And the second thing is basically a set or a suite of services and things that you want to have your developer basically enable them to do their best work and be proficient. So I think the combining those two is pretty much sums it all. Like we want to have basically a one-stop shop for developers to have a good orientation on the R&D organizations, the infrastructure, the software that we have, and basically have everything that we have. Like we want to enable them to achieve, creating new stuff, explore the already existing stuff. Basically a one-stop shop that does all of that. So basically that's it for me. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, both of you. Let's continue with Suzanne and Ron. And probably you already, Suzanne, explained the goal and the internal vision of creating the internal portal. But did you look, at open source commercial market before starting the portal effort? What's your finding before initiating this, the backstage?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So how we ended up building Backstage is quite a interesting but maybe recognizable story. So it goes back quite a while. So we started out building a spreadsheet, so we just could know who owned a certain service because we were struggling with that with our hyper growth. But yeah, then we needed to create a service, so it was queryable, and we ended up building a sort of CMDB. But yeah, we noticed that we needed more. So we wanted to be able to browse a list of services, their owners, but also platform tools, developer productivity tools. So we rolled into building this thing, which was a developer portal, but it was a monolithic web app. It was managed by one team. And building a developer portal, we noticed, is not really the way forward. So Backstage was actually created out of a necessity. And we decided to destroy the whole portal that we built and start again from the ground up, making it a platform to build a developer portal with. So giving those elements to those people who had the real knowledge about the technology, and those are, for instance, the feature teams, and they should be able to build a plugin. The platform teams should be able to build a plugin. So we actually rolled into this. We did not really look at other tools because there was no, when we started, there was no idea around what we wanted to do. We just had a necessity, and we made a failure to build a portal, and we took those learnings and built a platform for creating a developer portal, and basically the whole home for developer experience at Spotify. So that's a bit of how Backstage came to be.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. And Ron, you're on a different time. We already had some market tools there, and you did decided to work with Backstage. So what's your approach to the market?
Yeah, so our journey with Backstage starts like a year ago, and back then when we sought out to kind of like maybe a little bit like earlier, when I assumed my current position in Yotpo, what I did is basically created a developer experience survey. It was probably the first thing that I did, and aggregating all the results that I got from that survey from the developers, we sought out to have like the best solution that we could possibly have for all those problems that we had, and most of them kind of like concentrated on cognitive load and hard to orient, like bad orientation on the developers. Onboarding was pretty bad for new developers, so a lot of issues. And when we sought out like a solution for that, we developer platforms was just like kind of like hyping up, and Backstage released, I think on Backstage was open source, I think like in March 2021. So back then the landscape of developer portals was not great. Like it was a bit like a build versus buy thing. So we thought out maybe to build it on our own, but we saw Backstage as an open source project, and we kind of like investigated it and thought it would be a great fit because it's an amazing project. And in terms of like what we have right now in the landscape, again, it's something that kind of like blew up in the past year, and we saw a lot of like vendors trying to build software catalogs, developer portals, stuff like that. And I remember that when we explored the possibility of using Backstage, we basically we met with another company called OpsLevel, and another, I think it was Cortex. Both of them was pretty immature back then, and I think like for us the appeal, and for me specifically the appeal with Backstage is the community. Because using an open source project, which is backed by the CNCF, is something that can greatly help you the adoption and the implementation of the stuff that you're doing in your own organization. And I saw that when we started off using Backstage, the community around Backstage is amazing. And we basically took like ideas and parts from other organizations and other like people that implemented Backstage in their own organizations. So to me, that was kind of like the appeal, and yeah, I think it's worth it. It was worth it.
Great, thank you, Ron. Let's continue with Yaniv and Suzanne. Developer portal is based on system catalog, and the question here is, was it hard to initially catalog the system and tools, and how long it took? Let's start with you, Yaniv.
Okay. So yes, indeed, the service catalog, it's the tricky part. And it's important to say that it's a journey. You start with something, you are getting better over time, you learn new things, how to to make sure that your data is accurate. We have so many systems that needs to fit into a one concise and accurate picture. So, for example, we are pulling services from the GitHub, and we are assuming that what type of service is it? Also, is it a monorepo or is it not? We need to understand the service owner. How do we do that? So we develop a logic to assume who is the owner and the owner team behind this service, and also connected to the organizational chart, so to retrieve the structure of the team, and again, and taking data from the Jira and sample it to a concise one picture. So I would say that I think that the service catalog is the tricky part or the hard one in this in order to provide a really good picture for the developers and let them have the right information there. So again, we started. This is ongoing effort, and it will get better and better in the future until we make it as accurate as possible and automated as possible.
So it's kind of an iterative process, meaning.
This is how we are experiencing.
Okay, yep. And Suzanne, from you're probably using Backstage internally, and how long it? Yeah. So how was it from your point of view about the system catalog, the systems and tools?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to just answer this one more generally speaking. So I think that the approach of being iterative in this case is really a smart thing to do. So the question is not, can you get all the information in there? Because the answer is yes, you can. The real question is, do you want it? So you have to really look at the information that you put in there. Will this help a developer? Will this not cause confusion or not bring in that cognitive overload? Like, we have a lot of discussions in the community around, hey, can we import all our cloud services? Yes, you could do that, but will that help your developers in the end of the day? Or will that be just confusing? Because most of the time, most of the engineers, like overall, will not really be interested in seeing everything there is. They want to get the information which is valuable for them. So if you want to list cloud services, would you list all those cloud services in your catalog? Or would you maybe display that information in one of the tabs under a certain microservice, right? Which is a whole different approach. It's way less cognitive overload. If you're interested in it, you can find it. So there's all these things that you can consider for your specific situation. There is no silver bullet here, because in the end of the day, it depends on your engineering workforce and what matters to them. But doing good research and keeping as many things as possible out is always a good thing. It's the art of having everything, but also minimalism.
Okay, so let's a little bit deep dive into it, and it's a question for all of you. What's the criteria of which service to put in the catalog or not? What would it be the criteria? Which characteristic?
So I can offer one thing that we are doing. Again, there are so many services there. We need to bring the active services into to the catalog, while also connecting the attached resource, cloud resource, into this specific service. So one of the dilemmas that we have, should we present all the resources that we can retrieve and say this is what the service is consuming? So the answer for us was no. We want to bring the information that it's relevant for the developers to understand what the specific and relevant to him resources that his services is consuming. So we left out a lot of those other infrastructure ecosystem not related to the developer operation out, for example.
Okay. Any take on that, Ron, from your point of view?
So I would basically I would strive to put everything that I can in terms of on terms of like the software catalog on what we have. Like we have microservices, we have front-end applications, we have Spark jobs, we have libraries, we have everything. So basically I would strive to put everything that I can. I think if I would start, where would I start, or what would I, in order to be like successful? So I would start with basically the platform services, like the platform engineering services, the common libraries that we have, things that we are building internally that we want other developers to use. So I would first off maybe try to put everything there. And besides our platform engineering team, we also have like internal product platform. So basically another services that are being consumed by other product engineers. Also that I would probably try to put there also, because it's important for like better communication between the teams. So I would start off with those, like where we want developers to consume like common services or libraries. I would start off with those, but I would strive to put everything that I can. Okay. So yeah, one strategy that we did is we are using like the template to generate new services. So new stuff that are generated is already being like indexed to the catalog. So when I create a new Spring Boot API, it's basically already being cataloged to Backstage. So everything new that we are introducing to the platform, we already like baked in with the standards that we want to propagate to the team. So everything is being cataloged automatically.
Okay, great. Suzanne, anything to add to the discussion here?
Well, so there's also, like, I have an opinion on minimalism, but there's also like examples of companies who put in like literally any service they have. So for instance, if you search for the Backstage talk of HP, they explained that they like put in thousands and thousands of microservices in the catalog, and that will work great for them. So there's not a one size fits all approach. It just depends on your organization and your well, specifically also your engineering organization and their way of working. But luckily in Backstage, you can host like a large amount of different types of entities, like we call them. And basically you can filter it in any way you want. So that's the good news. It's flexible on that part. But I would say that like both arguments, like it's all fine.
Okay, let's do a quick stop. Any question from the audience? Someone would like to ask a specific panelist or a question?
I just wonder if it's Avi. I'm Avi from Taboola. Everyone know. Just interesting to see maybe some kind, not a demo, but a screenshot perhaps of the dev portal, something more visual. So is it possible to see it right now?
Yeah, I can share if you guys want to see. I can share like what we have right now, basically.
Okay,
go
ahead, Ron, if you feel.
Oh, that's great. Lovely.
Yeah. Okay. Don't judge me.
Thanks.
Don't judge me because I'm not prepared for it, but I'll give it my
best. Appreciate it.
You're seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so basically we're using a managed service called Roadie, and they basically host Backstage for us, and they handle like upgrades and stuff like that. And I can like elaborate more on why we chose to go with Roadie, but if you guys want to, I can share. Basically, Backstage is divided to kind of like three main pillars, I would say. And the first one of them is what we talked about, is the catalog. Basically, it's the catalog of all the software that we have around the organization, the documentation and the APIs. And lastly, the generator and the templates, which is basically the place where I'm most proud of. So when we I'll show you in a bit and what I mean. So each developer logs into Backstage. We are using Okta SSO, which is great. Basically, every developer can log into the platform, and this is like the landing page or the first page that they get. And in the left-hand side, we have like a getting started menu on what is Backstage and what we can do, and a lot of useful examples around here. So how do I add my service to Backstage? What can I do? Stuff like that. And also like good useful examples. And on the right hand side is like the more of custom plugins, like my own components, stuff that I favorite, services that I want to go to and stuff like that, my own pull request. So basically a lot of neat stuff there. So in Yotpo, like we have multiple domains, like a lot of domains. And basically this is how we divided stuff around here. So basically we have our backend infra domain and also like product domain. So I can take, for example, the customer data platform. But essentially the first thing that you see here is ownership. Okay, so Suzanne talked about like this is what like the biggest problem with Spotify. We didn't know like who owns what. And the same thing here in Yotpo also. So right off the bat, like ownership is a really big part of Backstage. And we can see that the customer data platform domain is owned by the Oracle's team. And the Oracle's team is consisted by these people. And we can see a lot of stuff that are also providing to the other organization. So right off the bat, we can see a lot of cool things here. I can kind of like a deep dive here. We can go to, I don't know, like the first service here called the Audiences service, basically a Spring Boot API. And each Spring Boot API service this is kind of like the default view that you get for each Spring Boot service, okay? So you can see like Kubernetes deployments, you can see GitHub Actions, Travis builds, pull requests, and also APIs. So basically we're using OpenAPI internally in Yotpo. We can basically see which kind of like endpoints and stuff like that this service is providing. So very useful. If I want to start work with the Audiences service, I can just go here, understand which is it, what kind of like APIs they have, what is the service is doing, and stuff like that. So this is kind of like the gist of the catalog. Basically, we try to catalog as much as we can. This is like just a specific like one entity, which is a basic service. Okay, stop me if you guys have any questions and you want to kind of like understand stuff. So another thing that we did here is I can go to maybe to the DevOps domain. We added a lot of documentation, and basically this is what's kind of like the hard part for us is migrating documentation from Confluence to Markdown. And this is kind of like a journey. I can share more if you're interested on like what are the challenges there. But basically, each domain has its own knowledge base, and we can like go back maybe to something more interesting, like the backend infra domain. We have like basically how we are doing testing in Yotpo in the backend domain. So a lot of useful information here, the testing pyramid, stuff like that. So basically, a lot of useful information all around the domains and also per service. So you can also within the service view, you can also see documentation there. So this is like the main two components, like catalogs and documentation. If you guys have any questions, I would love to take them. And lastly, we are also basically we're using the generator to create new stuff, and the first thing that we did is enable our developers in a self-serve manner. Everything in Yotpo is GitOps. So basically creating a new RDS in AWS is basically a pull request of a Terraform file. So if I'm a developer and I want to create a new database, I basically go through that wizard. I choose my instance size, my database version, and basically I get an automated pull request to my own repository. Terraform Cloud picks it up and just applies it. And I get a new database in production. And we did pretty much the same thing with all of our, not all, but some of our AWS resources like DocumentDB and Aurora, and we have like S3 buckets and stuff like that. A cool thing that we did here in creating like a new RDS database is basically when a developer creates a new database, he also gets a lot of things free, like observability and monitoring, like is something that is already baked in. You get like a dashboard in Grafana, you get alerts baked in, go to your team Slack channel. So everything is already pre-configured to your needs. So you just created a database, you already get like the observability part covered. Same thing that we did here with the front-end applications and also with the Spring Boot API project. If I want to create a new Spring Boot API, I basically go through the wizard and I get a project which is deployed to production. Again, observability baked in, dashboards baked in, alerting is baked in already. So you get like 5 minutes setup, you get a service in production. And lastly, we also had some generators that we did to enable like people have better experience when adding stuff to Backstage. So I did this Backstage starter pack, and basically it generates a pull request to your own repository with the default kind of like Backstage catalog info YAML and stuff like that. So basically, if you want to add a new service to Backstage, you basically go through that wizard, put on your repository, which type of service is it, who's the owner of it, and you get like everything. So this is pretty much what we have right now. Yeah,
it's great, great stuff. Thank you, Ron.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, my name is Zvika. I'm R&D manager of Unit in WalkMe. I just wanted to ask if the catalog is also external. Like, can I subset my APIs towards third-party developers?
I'm not sure if it's like, if you can do that. Maybe Suzanne knows better, but it meant to be like an internal exploration platform. And so I'm for like third party or like open public APIs, you have like, there's a tons of like other products for that. So I'm not sure.
Well, I think that if you integrate an audience through Okta, for example, which is your customer base, so you probably could do that too. It depends on how broad you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but then you're not public anymore. So that's basically where it's at right now. So it's not built for exposing to the public. But yes, if your public is manageable and it's like they need to log in or anything, then it might be a better. Then it might be a solution, but it's not really built to do that. But it's open source and extensible. So if anybody has a great idea or already has created something, you're always welcome to contribute to the project.
Thank you.
Okay, let's continue with the panel. And Ron, let's focus a little bit about your journey of the Backstage MVP. Which pains did you try to address, and how did you manage to promote it internally? Meaning, there is a tool and there is the usage. Yeah.
So again, like a good strategy for me was to start off with the platform teams and then the DevOps group and like when we discussed if we want to use Backstage, it was kind of like the product. If we want, as a platform team, we want to enable developers to do, I don't know what, create a new database, create a new microservice, I don't know. So basically, to me, it was the product. So we can use Backstage as our product and everything that we want to add, like features, creating a new, I don't know what, basically we added to the platform. So the adoption within the platform teams was relatively easy. Like it's a no-brainer for them. It's very easy to create new like scaffolder and generators and stuff like that and documentation. So for them, it was pretty much a no-brainer. I think throughout all of the organization and the R&D, this is a little bit more challenging. And what I did is, as I mentioned earlier, after we did the developer experience survey and we got the results from all the developers, and we kind of like aggregated like the biggest pain points for our R&D organizations, is basically I did a roadshow with all of the R&D teams, and I presented to them, hey, this is kind of like the information that we got from the survey, and this is kind of like the biggest pain points that you guys mentioned. I want to show you something, and this something is called Backstage, and tell me what you think. And basically, what I did is I pre-configured Backstage with an existing service and stuff like that, so I would be like a beneficial demo, and they really liked it. Like the roadshow was kind of like a success. I did it with a lot of the teams around the R&D. And but the journey from a developer like seeing Backstage and saying, oh my God, this is the most amazing platform there is, like the journey from that to I want to invest in it and put my things there, and I want to kind of like document and invest in documentation is long. And it takes time, and I think for me, as I mentioned earlier, the challenge, and still is the challenge, is within the tech docs. So basically, moving documentation from Confluence, or you might find it kind of like amusing, but some developers struggle with Markdown. They don't want to use Markdown. They still want to use Google Docs, and they want to use I don't know, Confluence. And so to me, this is kind of like the biggest challenge, because we don't have like one consolidated platform yet. It's a journey, and like the benefits of having everything in one place, it takes time. And I think it's like in 2-year time, maybe we will have like everything within the platform. A key success criteria here is when you create something new, you want it to be automatically added to the platform. So everything new that is being created is automatically within the platform, and you will left off with the old stuff that you need to migrate.
Okay.
So I want to. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just want to add to what you just said. That I feel that. It's indeed a journey, and I really understand the roadshow. That it's the same. I think it's almost the same story. We have the idea, what we want to do. We have the product. We want to do the first pitch, so we will start to invest in it. You are successful on, okay, let's go for it, and then you start to build it. Now, the adoption is the key element here. And I think that for us, what we are doing is making sure that we have adoption of early adopter group, which really will not just working on the product, but also act as some kind of ambassadors for us into the organization, and for sure it's investment to bring people in, encourage them to use the platform. But I can say that from what I see in the engineering organization, there is a really good hype. Like they understand the potential, they understand the value, and I think that the most thing that they are expecting to is the service catalog, which make a chaotic, endless services spreading and no one's know who owns that, on what are the dependencies are into a one place. So again, this is the value that bring the developers in such a product.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Suzanne, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to this because these are real valid points. Adoption is hard, and it's with any tool in an engineering organization, it's hard. But with Backstage, you need the buy-in, you need the people, because in the end of the day, it's not an effort for one team who manages Backstage. It's an effort for the entire organization. That goes from managing your metadata to maintaining or creating plugins. And that is basically how it works. So what we see as a success formula for a lot of companies who adopted Backstage, and we're really, really good at it. They started out generally with a small team to try and tackle one doable problem. And from there built out the experience, not only with Backstage or with TypeScript or with the creation of plugins, but also interacting with the community, knowing where to find and to learn more about Backstage and about the concepts. So all this knowledge is a part of the whole experience. It's not just a product. It's a whole open source product with the whole open source community, and the interactions there go from very deep code thingies to how do I approach adoption, or how do I drive developer experience, how do I measure success. So all these topics are also in general often being discussed as well. You spread that knowledge out to your internal tech communities. If you don't have them, you will need to start creating them. Sometimes nowadays communities are sometimes dormant because of the whole COVID period. And well, we had a meetup, but we stopped doing it. Well, start doing that meetup again. Share that knowledge, share those experiences. Host a plugin creation workshop to build up the confidence for people. It's really like the tour. I think the tour is a really, really great example. And I think that shows in the demo skills, by the way. But it like these things, it's an investment, and you need to pour water on the seed to make it grow. But when it grows, the community will pick it up, and you will accelerate the adoption. And yes, sure, there will be struggles, but basically these are the ingredients to start a successful adoption of Backstage. And don't try to solve everything at once, I think is the most important one. Please don't. And don't fork the project.
Okay. We are a little bit fighting with lunchtime, so let me do some fast forward from the questions. Let's summarize and ask each one of you, if for someone that's just starting their journey for creating developer portal, what is your advice? What do you wish for before you get started? What's anyone who can pick up this question, right?
So this is a good one. I think that I can talk about three things. Okay, so I think that first, you need to understand the requirements, understand exactly what you are trying to achieve, and put a really concise and accurate requirements on that. You need to make sure that your team have the right skill set to work on that and handle the project, the product. And I think, like Suzanne said, don't try to achieve everything at once. It will not work. Believe me, I tried. You need to break it into small milestones and just step by step start the journey. Because remember, adoption, it's something very tricky from the eyes of the developer. It's like the developers are the customers. So if you are doing a mistake, you need to think about it as a product, because you need to think how you are getting this product adopted by your customers. And if you're doing things not in an appealing way for the customers, then it will be very hard to bring them back after you fix things. So start small, break it into small pieces, and go from there.
Thank you very much, Yaniv. Ron, anything to add here?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize the infra as product approach. So work with your customer, always work with them, always like be very engaging. Go to them, like work with them and help them like on board to the platform. So you need to be very engaging when you want somebody to adopt the stuff that you're building. So I think this is the number one advice. Just treat it as a product, work with your customers, always kind of like advocate for the platform. I think that would lead to success eventually.
Okay. And from your point of view, Suzanne?
I couldn't agree more with treating it as a product. Your developer experience, your developer portal, it's all a product. And your consumers, your customers, those are the most important people, because those are not only the people who depend on the tooling and the services and everything that you provide. Your company depends on them. So invest in it like it is a product. Invest in it like these are your number one customers. Because if your developers are unhappy, they crank out bad code. If they leave your company, you're in a very, very bad situation, because it's hard to keep developers on board. It's hard to get them back or replaced by somebody else, and it will only slow you down. So treat it as a product and invest in it like it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any question from the audience before we close the panel?
I just want to say thank you very much. Also, maybe just a note as kind of where do you see the cutoff, or note in question, where do you see the cutoff in terms of scale of the team where the ROI starts to be positive? Like, for instance, I lead a kind of 60, 70 developer team right now, and we are also in the process of standardizing a lot of things. When, like, for me, it seems that perhaps this is too early, a tool like that. We're working on kind of, I don't know, index of documentation, simple tools that help us figure things out. I'm not so sure I'll get a positive ROI by trying to adopt something like this right now. Maybe at the 100 scale, it becomes more relevant. What are your thoughts on that? Where would you see like the place where something like this becomes like obviously something that you need?
So I recommend as a leader, you should put KPIs and measure. One thing that you can measure is the cycle time of your team, and understand if are you satisfied with the cycle time, it's good enough for the business. And once you understand that you have a gap that comes from, I don't know, the environment is too complex. We are doing the processes that we have are not efficient enough. Then you need to start thinking about how you need to think about yourself as a platform. And on top of this platform, how do I use the cycle time so the business will get what it needs in an efficient way and the developer will be happy? And also, how do I increase the velocity of your engineering team by providing them the toolbox to be successful? So I would start with just putting KPIs and measure it over time. And you will figure this out once you will see that you are not in a good place on those KPIs. So this is the time to invest on something do something different.
I think like I completely agree that not sure if like using Backstage in a group of 30 developers is something that that is like beneficial. So I completely agree that it's the context is very important here. So it depends of if you have like 80 developers and multiple, I don't know, business units, and the R&D teams need to communicate with one another, consume services from one another. You have like a DevOps operation team which want to enable developers to do like create infrastructure. I don't know. So it's really important, like the context on how the R&D is working right now. And for us, because we have like separate business units, but in the past one year and 1.5 years ago, we started like building a platform in like a product platform. So we need to kind of like those business units to communicate with one another, and we want like the communication to be as efficient and more as productive as we can. So for us, this is kind of like, I think was the appeal. So it's very important, like how like the product is built, the R&D organization is built. And if you need like teams to communicate with one another on a daily basis. So I would also look into that.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's so our take on this is measure, research, not only look at the for instance DORA and Accelerate metrics, but look at also the patterns that people do and use in their daily lives. For instance, if what steps do you need to go through to deploy start coding on a new service? Like, do you need to switch between 3 different systems, two documentation sites? Is that hard? Do you need for observability and properly resolve an incident? What steps do you take? So look at all those things of friction, and also where we have a really good experiences with our NGSAT. So that's that survey built by data scientists and user researchers and a lot of people who know a lot more about this, to really identify like the pain points and the struggles. And if you see points of friction, then developer portal might solve your problem, and then it might quickly be a good investment for you. So look a bit broader than just those hard metrics, but also look at the satisfaction, the happiness. It's really a part of the function. We tried it, only looking at productivity. We were not successful with that. Like we only, you know, the days to the 10th pull request, they went up to 60 days at some point for a new engineer onboarding. So you know, it's there's a broader story to it.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you all for participating in this event, and special thanks to Susanne, Ron, and Yaniv, our panelists. And hope to see you all in person in the TechRadarCon 22 next Monday. And Susanne will be there, one of our keynote speakers. So
in person.
Yeah.
In person, in real life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the demo.